I have to say about 90% of the stories that have been going on the last 3 days are the same story about Paul Mitchell, Jim Ratcliffe, Paul Mitchell, structural changes. It's becoming so obvious. It's rinse and repeat PR right now. Let's bring in some positivity. Yes, Paul Mitchell is great, but like we've got 12 different sources going on about Paul Mitchell, the same story about how Jim wants to change this and that. Like, tell us what Jim's going to do with the debt. Please. So I'm not going to get into any of those stories because it's the same story everyone's been talking about for about 4 days. But we do have some stories about Sir Jim's process of taking at least 8 weeks. It needs to start ASAP or he won't be here for the January window. And if he is here for the January window, potentially something could happen. But there are reports about the delays. It's going to take at least 8 weeks from when it's approved, if it's approved on Thursday's meeting, to obviously passing the Premier League ownerships test. Could Jim be here before January or not? We will talk about that news. And there's also reports that Qatar could come back into the race, but that would only happen if Sir Jim Ratcliffe's deal was not approved. Now, on Thursday, Jim Ratcliffe is meeting the board, and I assume that his deal will be approved by the board. Otherwise, I don't think Sheikh Yassin would have withdrawn so quickly. But, you know, Sir Jim needs to be approved by the board, then go through the 8-week process, then pass the Premier League ownership test. And considering the Glazers passed it, I think Sir Jim will pass it. But they said, look, if he fails, Qatar could re-enter, but I don't think he's going to fail, to be honest. But Sky did say this on the Qatar's bid for United. They said at the moment, the Qataris are telling us that they are out and that's it. But you can't totally rule out a scenario whereby the Ratcliffe deal falls apart and that gives an opportunity to Sheikh Yassim to enter the process. There's no indication any of that's going to happen, but Sheikh Yassim does have the finances to buy United at what he believes is a premium price. So essentially what they're saying is we're not saying that Ratcliffe's deal is going to fall apart. It's likely that Ratcliffe's deal is going to fall through, but if that does fall apart, there is a good opportunity there for Sheikh Yassim. So I think, you know, he's got the Premier League, he's got a big meeting on Thursday, which I think we'll know. I'm assuming that meeting's going to go well. Otherwise, I don't think Qatar would have been told basically by the Glazers to withdraw. I think the siblings will agree to that. The only way I can't see it going well is if basically the Glazers refuse to give up any control to Sir Jim. But I don't think that will be the case. They desperately need that money from Sir Jim. They're greedy. And then if it does fall through, or if he doesn't pass the Premier League ownerships test, or something major falls through, then potentially Qatar swoop in. But again, I do think it's unlikely. It'd be nice, but I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not going to lead you on. I think it's very, very unlikely unless something goes seriously wrong with Jim. So we've heard rinse and repeat PR about Paul Mitchell, this and that, what Jim's going to do, but how long is it actually going to take before Jim can basically make a change? So it was said the United board is set to ratify a Ratcliffe's purchase of 25% stake in the club for 1.3 billion on Thursday. It was said it is likely that it will take at least another 8 weeks for a deal to be completed, with Ratcliffe also required to undergo the Premier League owners and directors test before he can officially join. So essentially, he's going to probably be here around Christmas time, is the feeling. Hopefully, it's not something that goes into the January window, because hopefully there's a chance that we can spend and invest in the January window, considering we are looking at targets. But it said it's basically probably going to take another sort of 8 weeks post the meeting on Thursday, and that is obviously if it's approved. And then, as I said, Premier League owners test. But obviously, what would be a Ratcliffe report without mentioning Paul Mitchell? And oh my God, the rinse and repeat PR. We've had the same story 20 different times on Paul Mitchell. If I see one more journalist write about Ratcliffe bringing in Paul Mitchell, oh. But anyway, it was said Paul Mitchell, sporting director at Monaco, with experience across a key number of European clubs, is another name that could be considered for a key role heading up a recruitment team. Paul Mitchell is great. Paul Mitchell is fantastic. I want Paul Mitchell, but this PR. Paul Mitchell is amazing. We're going to tell everyone how amazing Paul Mitchell is, and then say that then say that Ratcliffe wants him for the 55th time, even though 55 other sources have said it. But it does say it remains to be seen if such changes can be made before the transfer window, given how long it will take for what is seen as the first stage of the full takeover to be completed. So again, there looks to be some delays with the takeover, or at least how Jim Ratcliffe can make changes. But there is a feeling that actually we won't be able to do things like Mitchell before the January window. It's a feeling that actually by the time Ratcliffe's actually in and can do stuff, it could be, you know, sort of February time. Paul Mitchell may be coming in for the summer, which, yeah, is a bit annoying, to be honest. You know, I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know how long before Jim gets power. I don't know how much power and control that Jim gets, but it's going to be a lengthy process, and there's a feeling that there is going to be a few delays, which is pretty frustrating. Now, amongst all the news, PR, a bit of waffle, clickbait stories we get at Man United, there's one story that made me laugh the most. Manchester United's football hierarchy are hoping to convince Sir Jim Ratcliffe that they can leave the club forward despite the threat of overhaul under the Ineos owners. Man United's football hierarchy, who wouldn't be employed by any other Premier League club that is known to be the most incompetent football hierarchy in top-level football, hope that they can convince Sir Jim Ratcliffe that they are the people that will bring the club forward, that will make Man United great again. You have to admire the level of delusion. Do our board think they're good? Because you're not. You're better than Woodward. So maybe that makes you look good, but that's because Woodward was awful. My mum would do a better job than Woodward. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, look, it's cute. They think they can convince Sir Jim. And I tell you what, if Sir Jim is easily convinced by Arnold and Murta going, keep me, keep me, keep me, I would be a little bit concerned. But, I mean, look, we've had about 50 PR reports about the whole structure being changed and Paul Mitchell, this and that. But that does need to happen. I tell you what, that really does. Now, what has Fabrizio Romano said on the takeover? Romano has said this. He firstly said, in the case of directors, I expect Man United to change very soon once Sir Jim Ratcliffe enters the club. In the case of the manager, I think it's different because Eric Ten Hag is already appreciated by the club. So what Romano is essentially saying is he thinks that when Sir Jim Ratcliffe is approved, when he does come in, he does think that the board of directors will change. So that does say to me, because Romano's saying it, that is probably Jim's intention. United are probably making sure everyone knows it because PR, PR, PR. But I think when Romano says something, you know it is the intention. When loads of other sources say it and rinse and repeat it, you think it's PR. But I think it's probably Jim's intention, but it's probably being rinsed and repeat as PR as well. It was also said by Romano that obviously Jim does like Ten Hag. There's a feeling in lots of reports that Jim and Ten Hag have a good relationship and that Ten Hag's position won't change as well. And that's been said by multiple people. And while there have been a lot of reports, rumours and news about obviously the takeover being delayed, could it impact the January window? It was said by the Times that Jim and his colleagues at Ineos hope to be in control of United's football operations in time for the January window. Now, this could be PR, this could be true, but it would be nice to have at least a January signing. And with Sir Jim's connection to Nice, Sir Jim Todabo would be very nice. So what else has been coming out on Ratcliffe? Because I have to say, the PR, oh my days. And Matt Hughes did a story and it I just thought I'm not really going to get into the whole story, but you know, one of the things that he said is while there's been no contact in recent months, it's understood that Ten Hag and Ratcliffe have a pre-existing relationship due to the latter's ownership in Nice, and they bumped into each other at Man United's training ground when the British billionaire was given a tour of the club's facility. Cool, cute, but do you have, I just feel like, I know I've said this 50 times, but every time I'm reading a story, it's the PR, it is the Ratcliffe PR. Let's paint out that Ratcliffe and Ten Hag are buddies because they bumped into each other at Carrington. You know, why is this relevant? Do you know what I mean? Like, not going in on the guy that wrote this, but it's basically like, yeah, Ten Hag and Ratcliffe bumped into each other once. Let's make that a story and make out Ten Hag and Ratcliffe are buddies. It's like, oh my God, like the level of bum licking to Jim Ratcliffe these journalists are doing. And a lot of these journalists, not this one in particular, but a lot of these journalists were going full sale only, full sale in Man United is the most important thing. And now they're writing about how Jim Ratcliffe will be good because he'll bring in Paul Mitchell and he'll eventually buy the owners out. And Jim Ratcliffe bumped into Ten Hag, they're buddies, and Jim Ratcliffe wants to bring in this person. Oh, Jim. But then you were saying full sale only. This is not a full sale. Please write about how long will it be until Jim owns the full club. Please write about what's going to happen to the debt. Please write about how Jim Ratcliffe will be able to afford to buy out all of the Glazers' share. Please write about that. Please stop writing. We know about Paul Mitchell Gate. Please stop writing about Paul Mitchell. Please stop writing that Jim bumped into Ten Hag. Oh, they could be buddies now. Write about what we want to know. That's how I feel. Now, because my voice is literally going, my throat's literally going, I do apologise, I am ill. It was said here about the January window that United could make some shot changes in the January window, particularly if Jim Ratcliffe is approved for control ahead of the January window. The first thing it said is that United are actively looking at ways to offload Martial in January. They're willing to accept a minimal fee. They know they'll go for free in the summer. United are really keen to see if they can do something in January to completely offload Martial, and from what I'm hearing, bring in Marcos Leonardo. United also exploring getting rid of Maguire in January, but obviously only if they can get a replacement in someone like Todibo. It was said that AC Milan are looking at Harry Maguire in January, and it was said obviously if Jim Ratcliffe comes in, potentially there could be funds there for a January window, but it likely would depend on sales. Now, in an ideal scenario, you bring in Todibo from Nice. Thank you, Jim. You get rid of Martial, you bring in Marcos Leonardo, you get rid of Sancho, you bring in someone like Nusa or Williams, and then Donny. Donny probably goes, and the money raised from Donny, if there's money raised from Donny, could probably go towards Todibo, because Meshby and Gore are kind of seen as that Donny replacement. Anyway, that was a summary of all the latest Manchester United news, transfer news, takeover news, and more. Takeover could be delayed, but hopefully should be sorted by the January window, and hopefully be spent in January. But I do think a lot of the transfer links could be PR. Hopefully we don't get a 57th story on Paul Mitchell coming out today. Hopefully we get something new, something interesting. Qatar could re-enter the process if Jim fails, but I think that's unlikely. Yeah, that is your news roundup. I do apologise for the breaks and my voice and all of that, but we're done. We'll be back live tomorrow.